Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello everyone, my name is Ade Amelia Fitri from TBI1. In this video, I will be reviewing an undergraduate thesis titled Improving Students' Vocabulary Mastery by Using the Crossword Puzzle Game at Grade 8 SMPN 5 Padang Sidempuan. This research was conducted by Yunita Permatasari Siregar with registration number 20208300021. I'm going to give a critical review of this thesis. I will look at five main parts: the title, the introduction, the theory, the method, and the findings. Let's see what the researcher did well and what could be improved. First, let's look at the title on the cover. The title is Improving Students' Vocabulary Mastery by Using the Crossword Puzzle Game at Grade 8 SMPN 5 Padang Sidempuan. Honestly, I think this is a good title. Why? Because it's very clear and researchable. It tells us three important things immediately: the the independent variable, or the strategy she is using the crossword puzzle game, and the dependent variable, the goal. She wants to improve student vocabulary. And the location is it's happening at SMPN 5 Padang Sidempuan. However, I have one small criticism. The title is a little bit too general. It says vocabulary mastery, but vocabulary is huge, right? Does she want to improve the students' spellings or their pronunciation or maybe their understanding of meaning? The title doesn't tell us, so it would better if the title was more specific. Next, let's look at the first chapter, Introduction. On page 2, the researcher explained the problem clearly. She says that the student English scores are low. The passing grade or KKM is 75, but many students are failing. I like how she explained the cause of the problem on page 3. She says the teacher was using boring methods, like the lecture method, because the class was boring. The students didn't want to learn. Yeah, this is very logical argument. But there is one part that feels a bit strange. On page 1, yeah. On page 1, the researchers talk about the 21st century and the Industrial Revolution 4. She talks about high technology, but then her solution is crossword puzzle, which is a very traditional low-tech game. So the gap is a bit weak here. She starts by talking about the modern digital era, but her solution is an old-school paper game. It feels like disconnect. Now let's check the second chapter, literature review. This is where the researcher discusses the theories on page 10. Here, she defines what vocabulary is. She uses famous experts like Brown and Hornby. My biggest criticism here is about the date of the source. This thesis was written in 2025. However, look at the citation. Here. There is one, 1991 and then 2007. These books are classics, but they are very old. Using a source from 1991 means the theory is over than 30 years old. In the world of education, things change very fast. It would be much better if the researcher used newer journals or articles from the last 5 or 10 years. This would make her arguments feel more fresh and relevant to students nowadays. Moving on the third chapter, the methodology. On this page, the researcher states that this is a classroom action research or CAR. CAR. She worked with a collaborator, the real teacher like Mrs. Hapsia. I was surprised the data collection, she didn't just one way to get data. You can see on this page. Yeah. You can see she used 3 instruments like interviews, observations, and tests. This is excellent because it makes the data more trustworthy. However, I found a big problem with the test indicators. Look at this page here. She lists how she gives points for the test. Identifying the noun gets 56 points. Identifying the noun gets 56 points. Spelling only gets 28 points. And knowing the meaning only gets 16 points. This is not blind. Imagine a student can recognize a picture of a table, but they cannot spell it and they don't know what it means. The student can still pass the test. The scoring system focuses too much on just looking at pictures rather than deeply understanding the words. And also, look at the procedure on page 28, if I'm not mistaken. Here. She mentioned that students can work groups. In cycle 1, they work it individually, but in cycle 2, she let them work in groups. This makes the research kind of unfair. Did the students really get smarter in cycle 2, or did they just get higher scores because they could ask their friends for the answers? This affects the validity of the research. Finally, let's look at the result in chapter 4. The results look amazing on paper. On page 6, 60, 62, 62 in table, yeah. In table 4, the average score in cycle 1 was 60.17. And let's look on page 75. In table 5, 6, in cycle 2, the score jumped to 82.60. That is a massive increase of more than 20 points. The researcher says this proves the crossword puzzle is successful, but remember what I said about the groups? In the discussion on page 82, the researcher compares her results to other studies. However, she fails to admit that the group work factor might be the real reason the scores went up. If you let students help each other during a test or practice, of course the score will go up. So while the result is good, we have to be careful about saying it was only because of the game. So to wrap up, I think, in my opinion, the title is clear and the problem is real. However, the researcher used old theories, data scoring was unbalanced, and the group work might have biased the results. Despite these flaws, the thesis did success in helping the student pass the class. That's all for my review for this thesis. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.